Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Travis Dillard, and I'm the President and CEO of Inflow Communications. And I have with me a couple of my favorite guys, Chris Riccio, who's our Director of Advanced Applications, Director of Contact Center and Advanced Applications here at Inflow, and Mr. Mike Doloff. He is our Chief Revenue Officer. And today we're going to talk a little bit about Twilio. And I'm going to not do as much of the talking. I'm going to be referring more to Chris and Mike, but just to give, by way of introduction, we started looking at Twilio. Well, first of all, we've always known that, we'll get into what Twilio is here in a second, but we've always known that communication platform as a service is going to be really important to help customers build very niche specific applications to help drive their operations around customer experience, employee engagement, et cetera. We actually got into Twilio and started developing on Twilio to help some of our customers with disaster recovery applications, and had a lot of success with it. And at that point, we've just been getting deeper and deeper with the tool set, and starting to have a lot of success, and our customers, more importantly, are having a lot of success with some of the applications we're able to do with them. So I guess to start off with, maybe Chris, I will ask you, maybe you could give a kind of a layman's term definition of Twilio for someone that might not necessarily understand what it is, and then we can talk about how we got into it a little deeper, and types of other things where we're using Twilio and what our customers are looking to us to help them out on the Twilio side of things.
Sure, and thank you for that. So Twilio, what is Twilio? Well, Twilio is a communications platform. To make it more simply put, think of old telephony platforms that meets today's modern technology, which is all web-based. Everything is driven by web interactivity. And what has really transformed and how Twilio has changed the game is their approach to this process. If you think in terms of contact center and just call activity, everyone understands that you place a phone call, you go over a phone line, and you make some endpoint meet together, and the two parties are communicating. However, with today's advanced technology and web applications and the myriad of processes and solutions that are out there, there needed to be a solution that interconnected both worlds together in a seamless environment. And so that's how Twilio was born. Basically taking old legacy thought process in terms of connecting party A with party B, but putting it into the web technology where everything is web specific, HTTP requests across the internet. And lo and behold, Twilio is sort of redefining what it means to be a communications platform, contact center, and all the pieces that touch the operation.
Well, and I know you also have a lot of the meat and potatoes of communications built into Twilio, and you can develop applications on top of it. So SIP trunking, SMS, texting, and other sort of what you would consider meat and potatoes applications already built in there and ready to use and plug into applications that you can build. So did I say that right?
Yes.
Okay.
And more.
And more. And much more. And Mike, is there anything else you want to add to what your definition of Twilio might be?
Well, I think, we if you've ever used kind of a ride-sharing app, Lyft and Uber, you've used a lot of the concepts without even knowing it, right? So if you are messaging with your driver for Uber or Lyft, or you're calling them, it's not sharing the cell number of your driver, it's masking that, but you're able to connect in a live call, or you're able to SMS and message. Those are functions in the back end. That plumbing is being handled by platform as a service applications like Twilio. So we, sort of in a consumer level, we use this technology, and we've used it in many different ways without realizing it. And obviously those are enterprises using that for their product and service, but that's just sort of the scratching the surface, and that the ability for organizations to sort of tap into that for engaging with their employees or their customers is really where Twilio tapped into that. Like Chris said, I think he said that nicely, of sort of this world of communications that's existed forever, right? For a long time, of connecting party A and B, but in a modern world in a way that can be leveraging that technology infrastructure to enhance an application, a modern application, or a modern piece of software. So it's sort of that interesting bridge from sort of the old to the new. And I think at the enterprise level, we're using it, everyone's using it, whether we realize it or not. But I think organizations are just starting to figure out what they can do with that. And I think it's interesting to highlight, some of the use cases, because I think there's so many organizations who've never thought of doing this because there was never a tool to do some of these things, right? There's never an easy way to accomplish what they're trying to do. And so it's sort of like Twilio is hard to talk about with people without use cases almost, right? Because you kind of have to tell the story of what it can do. Otherwise, it's really like it's the ability to SMS and make phone calls.
Well, and Mike, you mentioned obviously some consumer uses that are probably using Twilio or other communication platforms as a service. Maybe give some other use cases that we're seeing within our customer base, and some of the things we're helping our customers out with. I think translating that to the enterprise, I think, is probably a great next step. And Chris too, because I know, Chris, you've been working directly with a lot of these customers and our developers to be building these applications.
Sure. And so let me start by saying this. You know, one of the things that's changed is that the perspective of what it means to contact your client. Most people think of contact center. That's one piece of the puzzle. But the bigger perspective is, in my opinion, and this is sort of where Inflow falls in line, is that the contact center isn't relegated to just the ACD anymore. It's at any point in time across the organization, when do we need to reach the customer? And that's really critical. That is actually what has changed the whole perspective in terms of what it means to have a customer experience. And then with the advent of, you know, digital technology, everyone has a cell phone. I mean, it completely has changed where people need to go and what options need to be available to them. When it comes to Twilio, I think Twilio was the disruptor and has been and continues to be the big disruptor in the market, because it's allowing clients to build specialty applications to meet the needs that are non-traditional ACD bound. That is things such as after-call surveys. Even though they're attached to the contact center, you're thinking after-call surveys. It doesn't have to be a call. It could be any interaction activity. And when you start dissecting what are your touch points with your customer, you have a variety of ways in which you need to reach to your customer or have your customer reach you. And so Twilio gives us the opportunity to customize a solution that meets the customer's very specific needs. A simple example that we're using it here is that everyone or anyone that does anything in support services or technical support or as a liaison for a client outside business hours needs to have the ability to communicate with the business when something critical happens. A key application that we utilize today is an on-call application router or a process. If after business hours we need to reach someone on a rotating schedule, we use Twilio for that process, and for two reasons. Twilio can be pointed to a private number that allows us to white label it as an inflow phone call, but it also does a rotation process through a database query where it's accessing information available on the web, so we can tell the system which technician is on call based on a schedule. And then based on the interaction with the client can hang on and speak to the technician live. If the technician is not available, we leave a voicemail. Once the voicemail is left, then another whole process is triggered. Contact that technician every 5 minutes until they answer the call. And then you have incremental escalation. As the call sits longer or the voicemail sits longer, you start incrementing. Okay, now call this one tech. After 10 minutes, call these two techs. After 15 minutes, call 5 techs. It's all about expanding the net, expanding your processes, and really drilling into the expediency of certain types of communication. That's one piece. Now, you could translate that a million different ways, which we're doing for customers. We have many customers who are dependent upon answering services. Now, I don't know about you, or last time you looked at answering services expenses, it's a pretty hefty expense. There's a per call charge, let alone the per minute charges are exorbitant. And at that point, you're basically hiring somebody to answer a phone who then reaches out to a doctor or a nurse or an emergency technician. They're the intermediary, and you're paying a premium for that. Twilio can displace all of that and do it through a digital application. These are the types of applications that we're working with our clients to customize for them to get them out of the old game of pay to play. This is a whole different scenario. You're no longer bound to that third party. Instead, you have an application that acts as the human intervention, but still the end result is the same. Get me to the participant when I need it and escalate it as required.
Well, I know, and yeah, those are great examples. And I also know we have some PUD type customers that when they have outages, power outages, they get a massive influx of calls where their traditional telecommunications platform can't handle it. They don't have enough, they don't have enough carrier trunks to accommodate those calls, but they don't want, hundreds or thousands of trunks sitting there idle when there isn't a storm and when power lines are not down. And so we built some applications to help them out to immediately handle that massive influx of calls and apply different treatments to those calls, whether it's a forwarding off to answering services or messaging back to those consumers calling in or taking voicemails, et cetera. And so I think the point is, yeah, I mean, it's instead of trying to bite off a piece of software, the one size fits all, which we know isn't the case, specifically in the contact center world or even the customer experience software world. Twilio allows you to be very specific and pinpoint specific and addressing very unique business applications.
Yeah, I like those examples you guys shared, because I think that's where Twilio historically fits, has been this sort of filling these little gaps of opportunities to enhance a customer experience or solve a business problem. That doesn't mean ripping out massive amounts of technology. It just means sort of augmenting much of what's there in most cases, right? Bridging these little gaps, and I like that. One of my favorite use cases that we've seen is when we talk about customer experience. You've got so many businesses who just, well, this is the way our workflow happens. For example, if they're an insurance company, there's a claim and there's all these different steps internally that they're doing. And a lot of times, as you dig into the operations, you find that these organizations are spending a lot of time having to field update calls and update people. A lot of these things can be automated, right? Twilio can notify people through an SMS, and you can keep people apprised. So if you can minimize the amount of human intervention needed, you give a better experience because everyone's on the same page with what's the status of something. But you're also minimizing the cost of having to handle that type of interaction if it's a claim or something like that. So I think it's cool that the amount of sort of workflow enhancements that can be done as well. So sometimes it's behind the scenes. I think we've all gotten like an SMS message at something, whether it's your car's in the shop or you're working with an insurance company on something. There's so many industries and processes that we're part of every day as a consumer that could be enhanced if we just got better communication, and that can be automated. Certain step in the system happens, send off a message to somebody, place a call to somebody. These types of things can be done. And a lot of times, again, it's augmenting what's there as opposed to just sort of ripping it out and saying, you got to buy this one single platform. That really doesn't largely exist, right? Much of the world, in my opinion, still is really best of breed of things. And Twilio is a best of breed platform as a service that can plug in to these spots.
Plug in, and I think the key there is obviously plugging in and integrating with the customer's data sets. And that's key when things are changing in a CRM or things are changing in workflow. How are we leveraging communication and how we triggering those things. Sorry, Chris, I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just doing a bridge off the thought there. We were talking about the customer experience and the flexible options there and solution flexibility. But I also, coming from the technology side of where I grew up, is that it also gives the technologist, the IT director, the specialist, infinite flexibility. So we were talking, your example initially, Travis, was about, to break it down, it's about network flexibility and expandability. If today you only take on average 100 calls, but tomorrow you need 10,000 calls, there's no way you're going to have that many trunks available. So using Twilio to be your elastic response there is fantastic. But just from a sheer IT perspective, you have all these initiatives from the business that you want to plug these little holes. Twilio gives you the opportunity, as your example states, not having to go procure a separate application that does just this one thing. Twilio can be many things, filling the gap as you make incremental transitions into your technology. And as you're trying to grow forward, everyone will come in and try and sell you a grand solution. That's not always the best answer. The best answer is, let me try something incrementally small, take small steps. And this is where I think Twilio fits really great for the technologist, the person in the organization who's empowered to make decisions about solutions. Twilio gives them infinite flexibility to do proof of concept, test things out, see if it works, and then expand from there.
And to dove off that, to expand off of that, talk about risk mitigation, right? IT specialists or people that are purchasing or procuring technology within the organization, within the business. That's wildly risky. Everybody's got you have nightmares and fears of spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars, on an application that at the end of the day doesn't meet the business need. And sometimes simple is better. And risk mitigation. Let's bring it in. Let's test it. Let's start in bite-sized pieces and see if it works. And yeah.
I remember listening. I was listening to the Twilio CEO talk about that a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about this ability now for Twilio customers to just have an idea, put something together quickly, and like you said, go from sort of a concept to a testing within a matter of a couple of hours, right? As opposed to that massive lift to get there.
Statement of work.
Yeah, like that ability, that flexibility, and I think that like Chris, I think that's a great point of where the technologist fits in with Twilio, right? This is a very empowering platform for those who have that responsibility. But I think you've also got the business world has changed to the degree where it doesn't have to be this massive lift. It can be this quick spin up project. Let's test this out. Let's try this. And I think the businesses that have IT or technology people tapping into that are really going to be able to start maneuvering much more, with much greater agility, much greater ability to enhance experiences, differentiate their business, do all the stuff everybody's trying to do. While it's not like this, for me, it's like this just consistent small little things that they're doing. All of us want to get in shape and get better at things, but it's not like this one moment in time we do it. It's all these little repeated actions, right? Going to the gym, running, cycling, whatever. And like Twilio to me is like that. It's like these little things you can do to just enhance your brand, enhance your business. It's not this one big thing, And
yeah, you're right. And before you know it, your competitors are far, far behind you, and they have no idea how you're able to implement sort of this magic that you're able to provide, the customer experience you're able to provide for your customers. And they think it was millions of dollars worth of software and project teams and heavy lifting and lots of risk. Or really, at the end of the day, you're just taking a tool and really adapting it to your business, as opposed to the opposite, which oftentimes I think a lot of these major software providers want you to adapt your business to their tool. And and Chris, can you talk a little bit about Twilio is a developer's application. They are a developer's application, right? Is it? I'm not a coder. Is it incredibly complex code? Is it? I know they have kind of tools that blend simplicity with more down and dirty, in-depth code. Can you speak to that a little bit as far as holistically what you see Twilio as from a tool set standpoint?
Sure. And you kind of hit the nail on the head, is why originally when Twilio was out there, brewing several years ago, that it was the developer who really liked Twilio. And most people, when you say the term customer development, their heads explode and they can't deal with it because there's so much more involved in that. But Twilio is redefining what that landscape looks like from a development point of view. Now, if you pay attention closely to what Twilio is doing, they're putting additional apps out there that make everything basically a drag and drop wizard. Now, they haven't fully displaced the developer, but they've certainly got strategic tools that will do much of the heavy lifting, or what I'll call the nitty-gritty work, busy work, I'll say, of the development process, and streamlines it. So you end up with the mindset of the person you need to put in front of Twilio, which used to be a hardcore developer. Now you can put a junior technician who has a semblance of understanding basic logic, true-false conditioning. Maybe they're a little bit more advanced in terms of internet capabilities, but with tools like Studio is a drag and drop editor that allows you to build complex logic, including hitting web services and pulling back variable data, et cetera, which is what you would expect from a developer's point of view. But you don't need to be a developer to actually make that happen. Twilio's functionality inside its portal even lends its way to building functions, which is more of a developer slant, but it really is merging the worlds together. I think my best analogy in terms of how Twilio is transforming that world is the same way that content management systems changed web development. It used to be you had to hire a web developer to build your website. Not anymore. Now you've got applications like Joomla, WordPress, even online apps like Wix, and I forget there's a plethora of them now that allow you to just point and click and build a website. I believe Twilio is changing that perspective for developers. And I think they're changing at a pace that surprises people. But what is interesting is they're changing it off to the left. That it's almost as though people come in and go, I didn't know that was happening. Well, you didn't. But once you invest enough time and really watch what they're doing, you really understand the value of Twilio. And it's not just the application, but their mindset, how they're approaching this process and contact center collectively. It's transformative. And when you think of contact center applications out there today, some of the newest players, there are 3 or 4 players out there that are all built on Twilio. Mike mentioned earlier customer service applications that are using Twilio, things such as Lyft and Uber, and all the political campaigns that are sending you text messages. Hey, reply to this, reply to that. Those are all Twilio driven or an application similar to Twilio. But Twilio is the big granddaddy who started it all.
Guys, I'll shift a little because I'm interested to hear what your take is on Twilio. Has always been a platform play for developers, but that's evolved, right, Chris, like you talked about. Now, really about a year, coming up on a year ago, Twilio came out with their first product, right, Twilio Flex. What have you guys seen around Twilio Flex? Where does that fit? That's definitely a change from what Twilio has done in the past, building a complete product. So talk about that if you don't mind.
Sure. I would say historically that Twilio was a developer app. However, I think what Twilio recognized is that developers were creating contact centers, processes that were specific to their business. And from that, I think that they saw the writing on the wall that everyone's building this contact center application, so let's just go ahead and build it for them. What's interesting about Twilio's perspective on contact center, it's a first fully programmable contact center, meaning I can write whatever I want, whatever widget I need to have contact center. Now my contact center is no longer just about calls. It brings together all the things that I think there was sort of like the folks that forced everyone to think about it. They brought together the SMS, the texting, the campaigns, all the strategic stuff, the web service interconnectivity. But the real advantage with Flex is that I don't need everything to be a plug-in off the shelf, but you're going to create plug-in type processes. Meaning that today I'm in a contact center and I want to have a generic contact center, but tomorrow I want to add CRM integration. Well, just plug this code in, boom, integration done. But you're not having to buy the fully realized application like you see in the old legacy contact center applications where all the pieces are already built for you. You're pulling these pieces together as you need. I love this because anyone that knows contact center historically knows that whenever you purchase a contact center solution, it's usually missing something. It's not because people didn't think about it, but it's something they had to sacrifice for the breadth of the product. But with Twilio's Flex specifically, you can fill in all those gaps. And again, if you take a look and find out which of the providers out there are have Twilio under the hood, you will notice they too are building plugin applications. Point and click, add this. Point and click, add this. Point and click, add this, which is fantastic. I think it's going to be how contact center is evolving, and I think Twilio is driving that. And the more they get into the marketplace, that's how I see Twilio as different, especially from the contact center perspective. I know I'm going to have to just buy this box. I can buy the basic form and build what I want around it.
I want this channel. I want AI. I want database integrations. Yeah, and I don't think you're going to survive. Well, I don't think you're going to survive as a contact center provider, contact center software provider, without the ability to truly adapt and be that nimble with clients' needs, because clients are absolutely, customers, businesses are demanding that, because they can't survive without having the customization and the ability to be extremely nimble and delivering around their business objectives and initiatives, and especially differentiating and competing in this crazy world of customer experience.
Yeah, I think every contact center and any initiative, and when I say contact center, I'm talking about the global operation, not just ACD. Every business has a need to have some sort of communication or bridging applications. I think of Twilio as not only the communications platform from the contact center perspective, but also helping me bridge other apps I already own. There's so many people that have apps they already own, and I think that's allowing them to fill the gaps at the same time, be creative about their future as well.
So what's our future with Flex, Chris?
Well, Flex is giving us tremendous opportunities to really customize a contact center solution for a client. And again, I'm not speaking about the ACD specifically. I'm talking about
Mm.
the big picture. I always look at customers and think of it this way. Okay, what's your customer experience strategy? Clearly from a customer support point of view, but you have other things. What about marketing? What about bridging data together for BI applications? All those things go into play, and there's so many other aspects of the business that people forget about, but they're lost because they're not under the ACD umbrella. We talked about a few examples a few moments ago. Elastic bandwidth or elastic telephony.
Mm.
There's just, we can go on and on about the processes. What I like best is, in terms of Flex, is that we can come to the table with a solution for the customer and then re-envision what that solution might be. Typically, you have a partner like Inflow who comes in and here's my toolbox, A, B, or C. But customers like, well, none of those options fit. We're sort of like between A and B. With Flex, we can make that happen in the context of the application.
It's powerful. I think Twilio is leading a technology revolution. Exciting. It's exciting to be a part of it, and exciting to watch it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and interestingly, they're even changing sort of the pricing model for contact center CCAS. Typically, you pay for a flat license fee, but now you've got options. Most people kind of look at it this way: hey, why am I buying a full license for someone who's a part-timer? Twilio changes that. It's interesting. I think they're disrupting folks in a way they hadn't envisioned, and causing other folks to say, wait, we should be doing that. Hold on, we should be doing that. Anytime someone evokes a response that we should be doing that, they're doing something right.
Yeah, they're disrupting. Sure.
I think you could broaden it even a little beyond Twilio to say the contact center platforms that are leading are ones that are API centric, that are lending themselves to be more like a platform, right? Than just, because this world of contact center has really evolved and continues to, but it's really interesting. I mean, you have customer, we have customers that are handling, part of their omni-channel customer experience through a good portion of that's being handled through their Salesforce or Zendesk. And then, so there's all these channels coming from different places, but you want it to feel like a whole experience. And through APIs, through sort of these more modern applications like Twilio, you have the ability to, again, it's sort of best of breed to some degree. I don't see that changing anytime soon, because you have this customer interaction world colliding on multiple fronts, from traditional ACD players to CRMs to service ticket applications and all these other platforms. And it's this interesting hodgepodge right now.
And other industry-specific applications for like medical, EMR, and other things. Yeah, and I think what it does also is with the API-centric applications, it puts the power back in the customer. Because how many times, oh, you want this channel, you want to turn this up, that's going to cost a lot of money, and it's going to be very complex, and it's probably in the end not going to give you exactly what you wanted, and you have to settle. And so I think this allows customers to really get where they want, really customize the application to meet their business needs, put the power back in their hands, and like we mentioned before, mitigate a lot of risk in how they do so. So we're excited to be a part of it. Anything else?
I'll add, my last closing comment would be, I feel like the technology in some regards is way out in front of adoption. Meaning there's like capabilities with the technology that are really, really progressive and out in front, but many businesses, there's a gap between that and where businesses are at in a lot of cases. And I think Twilio fills some of that void really nicely by being something you can just drop these pieces into, right? It doesn't have to be this big shift. It's just a little thing, maybe one specific workflow, one notification, one channel, something. But I feel like there's this massive gap between where technology is and where most companies are at with their maturity and trying to, because it's not just how do we operationalize these things? It's that there's not roles that have historically been used to do these things, right? You've got sort of your traditional roles in IT and development, and there's not even people who are responsible for this. So I think organizations trying to figure out who does this work, right? And there's a gap. So I think Twilio fits some of that gap, but some of that is it'd be interesting just to see how that sort of lag between technology continue to advance and where organizations are at, I think companies that can stay pretty close to that have an advantage. And how that happens will be different for different businesses. But that's what I see. I just see this kind of rapid pace of technology changes and a much slower adoption from the majority of companies.
Well, we see that. You go to a trade show, and I mean, people are just drinking from a fire hose. You've got every provider out there, equipped with millions and millions of dollars of VC, and they're just pumping out technology, and these customers are just, deer in the headlights. And I think that's a big part of the value add that Inflow brings. Here's a plug here, but I mean, we help. Let's start with what the business is trying to do. Let's start with what our customers are trying to accomplish, and then let's put you on a program, and let's feed it to you in bite-sized pieces, and let's get there. It's an iterative process. Let's not try and slam you with a bunch of costs and OpEx, and maybe it'll meet your needs, maybe it won't. So that's kind of the new integrator, taking all these technologies and making it really work for the business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. If you're close to it and you've been paying attention to what's happening, you're able to succeed. But at the rate of technology and the way things are developing with applications such as Twilio, I mean, the clients need someone to help them get there and helping them understand what options are available. And I think that's where we fit in best, because we have the exposure to it, but we also have the creativity behind it. We saw the vision several years ago in terms of data and how you use data to augment the customer experience, but now it's the next frontier. Okay, now that I'm connected to data, what available options do I have? And I think when you're talking about business growth and strategy, at some point, you're not going to be able to keep up with growth unless you're able to bridge the right technology in the right places. That doesn't mean you have to go buy new platforms. Find an elegant one that helps you bridge what you have as you continue to chart your path forward. And I think, Travis, you said it best, is that the applications that are getting higher adoption and success are the ones that have true open APIs. It gives the consumer the flexibility to chart their own path. But right now, there are quite a few clients who are sort of at a analysis paralysis state. They're getting so much influx of information. I don't know which way to go. Which is the best option? Well, that's where you need someone like an Inflow who comes in, someone who has the experience, who's actually done the work and can start bridging the gap and help get you on a success path to there. I worked with a client recently in Missouri, and they have pretty much leverage the extent of their application now. They're finding themselves in this interesting place of, well, they'll jump off the cliff to this other app. Well, before you jump off the cliff, understand the landscape, because you don't want to find yourself in the same position you've been in, which is a closed door application that doesn't give you the flexibility to meet the market now, but also in the next 5 years. So yeah, I'll end there. I mean, the flexibility that we have with Twilio, with Flex, the contact center options, and other applications that we care to invest in is all about how do we help our clients get from this point to the accelerated future.